Sonia was a girl born with a gift that seemed to belong not just to the earth, but to the very air itself. From the earliest days of her childhood, her voice carried a magic that went beyond mere melody. It healed the sick, calmed quarrels, and brought joy to hearts heavy with worry. Villagers would pause in their daily routines to listen as she sang while drawing water from the well, or while sweeping the courtyard. The simplest of tunes from Sonia could lift the spirits of the most despondent farmer returning from the fields, and her laughter, woven into her songs, seemed to make even the most stubborn clouds bow to the sun. Children adored her. They would gather around her as she hummed along the river, trying to match the clarity and sweetness of her tones. Some even claimed that the wind itself seemed to carry her voice further than it should, trailing behind her like a faithful companion, carrying notes of her songs over the hills and into the neighboring villages. Travelers who happened upon her by chance would stop their carts, leaning out to listen, enchanted by the purity of her sound. Even the elders, who were often wary of youthful exuberance, would sit quietly at a distance, smiles softening their ancient faces as Sonia sang songs of the river, of the trees, and of the unseen spirits that guarded the village. But it was not just the beauty of her voice that captivated people, it was the heart behind it. Sonia sang with compassion, as though each note was an offering of her soul to those who listened. Mothers would bring their sick children to her side, hoping that the vibrations of her voice could soothe fevered brows or ease trembling limbs. Farmers believed that a song from Sonia at sunrise could make the crops grow taller and the fruit sweeter. Her melodies became part of the very rhythm of the village life, a thread of harmony that connected every person, animal, and living thing in the small community. Despite her fame and adoration, Sonia remained humble. She never demanded attention or gifts. Her songs were not for wealth or for praise. They were for the pure joy of sharing, for the quiet moments when a heart might open just a little wider. She would often wander barefoot through the fields, the wind teasing strands of her hair as her songs mingled with the rustling of the leaves. Birds would pause mid-flight, joining in her tune with soft chirps, and even the river seemed to ripple in rhythm with her voice. There was a sense that nature itself recognized her purity, that the world had carved a special place for her song to exist unbroken and free. Her presence became a quiet legend. People whispered that Sonia's melodies could reach the ears of spirits hidden in the mountains and forests beyond, calling them to protect the village and watch over its people. Travelers would recount tales of hearing a song carried by the wind at night, gentle and sorrowful, and when they traced it they always found themselves near Sonia, the girl whose heart and voice were one. It was said that even when she slept, the wind hummed the faint echoes of her melodies, as though her song could never truly be contained. In every sense, Sonia was more than a girl. She was the pulse of her village, a living harmony, a bridge between the earth and the unseen. Her voice did not merely fill the air, it touched hearts, healed wounds, and reminded everyone that there was beauty in kindness, and power in a melody born of love. It was impossible to hear Sonia sing and remain unchanged, for her heart poured itself into every note, and every note left a piece of itself in the hearts of all who listened. Della had always lived in the shadow of Sonia, but as the years passed, the gap between them seemed to widen into a chasm of bitterness and longing. Where Sonia walked, light seemed to follow, and wherever she sang, hearts opened in admiration. Della, on the other hand, felt the weight of every jealous whisper that grew louder in her mind. She envied not only the warmth and beauty that people attributed to Sonia, but also the effortless joy her stepsister brought into the lives of all who heard her. Every festival, every gathering, every simple village chore became a stage where Sonia's grace and talent shone effortlessly, leaving Della simmering in quiet resentment. When travelers arrived, it was always Sonia's songs they sought. When elders praised virtue and kindness, it was Sonia's name that they spoke. Even children, who once played with Della as readily as with Sonia, began to follow the singer, drawn to her melodies as though carried by invisible threads. Della's envy festered with every note and every smile. As her jealousy grew, Della began to watch Sonia closely, searching for a flaw, a moment of weakness, anything she could exploit. She noticed the gentle way Sonia's eyes lit up when helping others, the soft lilt in her voice when comforting a frightened child, the way her laughter made the air itself seem warmer. Each observation, instead of comforting her, only deepened the fire of resentment. How could one person be so gifted, so loved, while she remained unnoticed, forever in the background? Her envy became an obsession. Della started visiting the markets and temples, listening to stories of ancient curses and charms that could capture voices and transfer gifts. She sought out travelers who spoke of distant lands where magic was a common currency, asking for methods to claim what was not hers by right. With each whispered tale of power, her desire to possess Sonia's gift grew. The thought of hearing Sonia sing and being unable to respond in kind became unbearable. In her mind, the world had been unfairly skewed in favor of her stepsister, and she intended to restore what she saw as balance, by taking Sonia's voice. Della began crafting small schemes, testing her courage and cunning. She would approach Sonia under the guise of friendship, offering help with chores and joining her in playful songs, all the while studying the rhythm and tone of Sonia's voice. She took careful notes of her sister's habits, the way she sang to the river, to the children, and to the trees, believing that mastering these patterns might give her leverage. Each encounter left Della more determined. The admiration Sonia received became fuel for her plotting. As the envy fermented into malice, Della decided she would not remain content with stealing mere attention or praise. She would claim Sonia's very gift, the voice that could sway hearts and bend the spirit of the world itself. If she could capture it, she would finally be the one who commanded admiration, whose presence brought life and joy, whose song would travel beyond the village. Night after night, she whispered to herself, imagining the moment when the village would finally turn to her, and Sonia would be silent, powerless to charm or heal anyone again. And so Della's heart hardened with intent. Her jealousy had transformed into a plan, carefully crafted and fueled by every slight, every moment of admiration directed toward Sonia. The voice that once brought happiness now stirred envy, setting the stage for a darkness that sought to claim what was pure and generous for itself. Della's ambition was no longer secret. It had become a driving force, a shadow that threatened to eclipse Sonia's light unless the wind itself intervened to carry justice through the kingdom. You said. During the Festival of Blossoms, when the village square was alive with laughter, music, and the scent of fresh flowers, Della put her plan into motion. She had spent weeks preparing, studying old texts and whispered tales of magic, charms, and curses, all with the intent of seizing Sonia's gift. The grove at the edge of the village, dense with ancient trees and shadowed in perpetual twilight, had long been rumored to hold lingering spirits, some benevolent, some vengeful. Della chose it carefully, for its dark reputation would mask her deeds and lend power to her charm. On the morning of the festival, she approached Sonia with a warm smile and false excitement. The grove, Della said, is said to amplify the beauty of song. If you sing there, the spirits themselves will bless the melody. Sonia, trusting and kind-hearted, agreed without suspicion, eager to honor the festival and share her voice with anyone who would listen. The villagers, busy with the celebrations, barely noticed the two girls slipping toward the grove's shadowed entrance. The moment they crossed the threshold, the atmosphere shifted. Sunlight faded into a soft green glow filtered through the thick canopy. The air was heavy with the scent of moss and damp earth. Sonia's heart leapt, sensing something ancient and sacred about the grove, while Della's pulse thrummed with anticipation, a mix of fear and exhilaration. She began reciting the dark incantation she had memorized, weaving words like threads of shadow around Sonia's notes. Each syllable was precise, each gesture deliberate, as she called upon the grove's latent power to bind the voice she coveted. Sonia lifted her head and began to sing. Her voice, pure and bright, rose through the trees, curling around every leaf, every bird, every stone. The air seemed to shimmer with her melody, and for a moment, even the grove itself appeared to lean closer, listening. But as her notes traveled, Della's charm took hold. Invisible chains wrapped around the sound, capturing it midair, twisting it into a silent cage. Sonia's voice faltered mid-verse, caught in the magical net. Panic and disbelief flooded her, but before she could call out, the grove swallowed her cry. Her words, her laughter, her music, all vanished. Sonia fell to her knees, stunned and heartbroken. Tears blurred her vision as the realization struck. Her gift, her connection to the world through song, had been stolen. She tried to hum, to whisper, to call her voice back, but only silence met her efforts. Each attempt tore at her spirit, leaving her grief-stricken yet still gentle, still unwilling to harbor hatred. The grove seemed to mourn with her, a soft rustling of leaves and sighing of wind accompanying her despair. Meanwhile, Della emerged from the shadows, triumphant. She carried herself with the poise and confidence of one who had inherited a great prize. In her mind, the stolen voice was hers now, ready to bring her the admiration and glory she had long desired. She began mimicking Sonia's melodies, claiming them as her own, her steps light, her smile wide. Villagers who passed near the grove heard the notes and assumed they came from Della's lips, marveling at her supposed talent. They cheered, praising her, unaware of the theft behind each note. Yet, though Della gloated and Sonia wept, the wind itself seemed to stir with sorrow. Among the leaves and over the hills, the air carried fragments of Sonia's melody, faint but persistent. It whispered through the village, brushing past ears that might recognize it, foreshadowing the power of a voice that could not be truly silenced, even when trapped by shadow. And in that fragile, trembling murmur of music, the seeds of justice, hope, and the eventual return of Sonia's song had already begun to grow. Sonia woke the morning after her voice was stolen with a hollow emptiness in her chest. The melodies that once poured effortlessly from her lips were gone, leaving only a deafening silence that seemed to echo through her very bones. She tried to speak, to hum, to whisper even the smallest note, but the grove's dark charm had stolen more than sound. It had taken the bridge between her heart and the world. Panic and sorrow churned within her, but she forced herself to rise, knowing that the village still relied on her gentle presence, even without song. She moved through the village carefully, letting her hands speak where her lips could not. Each gesture was deliberate, a comforting touch for the sick child, a pointed indication for the farmer to tend to the wilting crops, a hopeful smile for the elders burdened by worry. She learned to use her eyes as windows into her emotions, conveying warmth, understanding, and encouragement in ways she had never needed before. Children, who had always followed her for the music, now followed her for the reassurance of her presence, reading her expressions like unspoken lyrics. At first, the villagers assumed Sonia was merely tired, perhaps under the weather, until days turned into a week, and the absence of her voice became undeniable. The fountains no longer seemed to sparkle in the same way, the air lacked the gentle cadence her song had once carried, and even the animals appeared subdued, sensing the imbalance. Farmers paused as they worked, villagers hesitated mid-task, and the elders frowned in concern. The invisible thread of harmony that Sonia had spun through the village had been severed, and the silence weighed heavily upon the land. Neighbors began to murmur. "Where is her voice?" asked one mother to another as her child tugged at her skirt, searching for the comforting sound that no longer came. "Has she fallen ill? Is it a curse?" The questions spread like tendrils, weaving anxiety through the community. People noticed Sonia's expressive hands and her shimmering tears, and slowly, the truth dawned upon them. Something unnatural had silenced their beloved girl. Sonia herself, though heartbroken, refused to give in to despair. She scribbled notes on scraps of parchment, pointing to remedies, advising the sick, offering guidance to those who sought it. Her eyes, filled with unspoken emotion, radiated patience, wisdom, and the same healing energy her voice had once carried. Though the villagers could not hear her song, they began to recognize that her essence, her kindness, courage, and dedication, remained intact. The wind, which had carried whispers of her stolen melodies, now seemed to respond to her silent cries. Leaves rustled in patterns, streams shimmered more brightly, and even the sun appeared to linger longer over the village, as if urging the people to notice the absence that was also a presence. Slowly the villagers' perception shifted. Their hearts opened to the realization that though Sonia could not sing, she was still with them, still guiding, still healing, still connecting the threads of life through her unwavering spirit. By the end of the week, it became clear. The village had lost its song, but it had not lost its hope. Sonia's silence became a language of its own, a testament to resilience, patience, and the quiet power of a heart committed to goodness. And though her lips could no longer release the melodies that had once charmed the world, the villagers began to understand that her song had never truly left. It had merely shifted, moving through gestures, glances, and the unspoken bonds of love and care that wove the community together. Though Sonia's lips were sealed by Della's dark charm, the wind itself seemed unwilling to let her song fade. At first, the villagers noticed faint echoes on the morning breeze, a subtle trill in the trees, the soft rustle of leaves that mimicked the cadence of her lost voice. Farmers paused mid-sweep, listening as though the wind carried a message meant only for them. Streams, usually babbling quietly, rippled with a rhythm that seemed deliberately musical, as if the water itself hummed Sonia's melodies. Birds chirped along the banks, their calls forming gentle harmonies that were unmistakably inspired by the girl they had long admired. Sonia, though silent, felt these vibrations as keenly as if she had been singing herself. Standing on the hilltop by the river, she lifted her hands to the sky, tracing shapes in the air as though conducting an invisible orchestra. Each breath of wind brushing against her skin carried fragments of her stolen song, and she felt the currents responding to her silent will. It was not the same as her voice, but it was proof that the music within her heart could not be entirely silenced. The melody had found another vessel, one that flowed freely through the elements rather than being confined to human lips. The villagers soon began to notice patterns in the air and landscape. Morning breezes would stir the grasses into gentle waves, forming shapes that mirrored the arcs and movements of a dancer's hands. In the evenings, when the wind whispered through the valleys, it carried tones that resembled her lullabies, comforting children who were restless or afraid. Even the livestock seemed calmer, responding to the harmonic pulses in ways the villagers could not fully explain. Slowly, the people began to realize that Sonia's presence had shifted, becoming part of the kingdom itself, woven into the natural world that surrounded them. Travelers passing through the region paused more often, remarking on the unusual harmony of sounds in the wind. Merchants told tales of hearing a gentle, invisible voice guide them safely along mountain paths, or soothe the anger of quarrelsome neighbors. Some claimed the wind even carried the scent of flowers in patterns that seemed to follow a tune. Rumors spread that the girl who had been silenced was still singing, not with her voice, but through the air, the rivers, the trees, and the stones themselves. Sonia noticed the subtle joys and comfort her invisible songs brought. Although her own lips could not form the notes, she saw that her spirit was reaching hearts across the kingdom. She understood that the wind, the ultimate messenger, had become her surrogate voice, spreading kindness, hope, and beauty wherever it traveled. The song had transcended human limitations, taking on a life of its own, guided by the purity of her intentions. Even Della, who reveled in the glory of her stolen song, could feel the effects. Wherever she tried to claim attention, the wind seemed to whisper reminders of the original melody, highlighting her deceit and stirring unease among the crowd. The kingdom was learning that music born of truth and goodness could not be bound by malice or greed. It found a way to persist, flowing freely through the world. By the time the villagers fully recognized the miracle, Sonia's presence was undeniable, though invisible. Children ran through meadows, pointing at streams or wind-blown leaves, humming melodies they could not fully explain. Farmers and elders found solace in the pattern of breezes, and the animals thrived. Her song, though stolen from her lips, had become immortal, carried in every gust, every ripple, and every whispered movement of the natural kingdom. Sonia, though voiceless, set out at dawn, following the gentle currents of wind that carried fragments of her own song. Each breeze seemed to hum encouragement, tugging her along paths she might otherwise have missed. The hills stretched before her, the fields giving way to thick forests where sunlight filtered through leaves, casting dancing patterns on the mossy ground. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of the air, seemed to guide her steps, as though the wind itself were a companion and mentor, patient and unerring. Early in the forest, Sonia encountered her first challenge, a clearing guarded by spirits of ancient trees. Towering oaks and twisting vines formed a natural barrier, their branches almost human in their motion. The spirits, their eyes glowing faintly, demanded to know why she had come. Sonia raised her hands, shaping silent gestures to communicate her purpose. Her voice had been stolen unjustly and she sought to reclaim it. The spirits studied her silently, testing the sincerity of her heart. One by one they whispered through the leaves, posing illusions of fear, shadows that mimicked her own doubts, gusts that pushed her off balance, and whispers that tempted her to turn back. Sonia felt the fear, the doubt, and the weight of despair, yet she pressed forward, relying on the rhythm of her heartbeat, the subtle melodies in the wind, and the courage that had always lived in her spirit. The spirits, seeing her unwavering resolve, parted their branches, allowing her passage while murmuring blessings of patience and focus. Further along, the path steepened into rocky slopes that led toward the mountain range. There, Sonia encountered the mountain guardians, beings carved from stone and shadow, their eyes like molten rock and their voices like echoing thunder. The guardians demanded that she prove her humility, for they could sense the pride and envy that had tainted others who had attempted the journey. Sonia approached them with bowed head, letting her hands trace the shapes of rocks and roots as she moved. She offered no plea or boast, only silent acknowledgement of the mountain's strength and the natural order. The guardians challenged her with visions of temptation, treasure that promised instant wealth, voices that imitated her own song, and the allure of shortcuts that would restore her voice without effort. Sonia felt the tug of desire but resisted, recognizing that a gift reclaimed through greed would not be true to her spirit. The guardians, seeing the purity of her intentions, allowed her to continue, marking the rocks with faint glyphs that glowed in her path, guiding her further. Along the higher slopes, the air grew thin and the temperature dropped, yet Sonia pressed on, guided by the wind that now carried clearer fragments of her original song. Streams that trickled down the mountainside seemed to form harmonies, echoing the tones of her melody, and birds perched along cliffs sang back to her in perfect response. At times, the wind itself formed a tangible current that lifted her hair, brushed her face and nudged her forward, a constant companion affirming that she had not strayed from the path. At night, she made camp beneath overhanging cliffs, the stars forming constellations that mirrored the pattern of her song in their alignment. Whispering winds lulled her into a meditative state, and though she could not sing, she hummed silently in her mind, feeling the vibrations resonate through her chest and into the ground beneath her. Each thought of melody strengthened the invisible bond with her song, allowing her to navigate treacherous terrain and avoid hidden dangers. On the penultimate day, Sonia reached the edge of a narrow pass where the wind seemed almost alive, swirling in intricate patterns and forming audible harmonics. The mountain guardians appeared once more, this time testing her courage. A storm of ice and stone whipped around her, threatening to push her down the cliffs. Sonia closed her eyes, trusting the rhythm of the wind and the pulses of her inner song. She stepped forward with unwavering faith, feeling the wind bend around her like protective hands, carrying her safely through the peril. The guardians, impressed by her steadfast courage, parted to reveal the entrance to a hidden plateau where the source of her stolen voice awaited. The plateau itself was ethereal, bathed in golden light that seemed neither sun nor fire. Crystals rose from the ground, humming with resonance, each one attuned to the essence of her song. A single large crystal, suspended in midair, pulsed with a luminous aura, the vessel in which her voice had been trapped by Della's dark charm. The wind circled around it, carrying echoes of her stolen melodies in a perfect, haunting chorus. Sonia reached out, feeling the vibrations against her fingertips, and knew that the journey had tested more than her endurance. It had purified her heart, strengthened her resolve, and reaffirmed the truth of her spirit. In that moment, Sonia understood that the reclamation of her voice would not be immediate through force alone. It required harmony with the mountain, patience, humility, and recognition of the sacred bond between herself, the wind, and the elements. The mountain plateau whispered promises of restoration, urging her to embrace her inner strength and trust the forces that had guided her so far. She felt her song returning, not in her throat, but in her soul, ready to be carried outward once the trials were fully met. Thus, guided by the wind, the mountain spirits, and her own unwavering heart, Sonia prepared for the final step, reclaiming the voice that was stolen, and allowing it to soar across the kingdom once more, a song of truth, courage, and harmony that no envy could ever silence. At the summit of the mountain, where the clouds swirled like silver veils and the wind sang in invisible currents, Sonia finally stood before the spirit of the wind, a being of air and light whose presence commanded both awe and serenity. The spirit, its form shifting like smoke caught in sunlight, regarded her with quiet scrutiny. It sensed her courage, her patience, and the purity of her heart. Then, with a voice like a chorus of breezes, it addressed her, "Child of melody, your voice has been stolen, but your spirit has never been silenced. Are you ready to reclaim what is yours?" Sonia, though still voiceless, nodded with unwavering certainty. The wind swirled more intensely around her, lifting strands of her hair and brushing against her skin like invisible fingers of encouragement. It guided her hands to the crystal that had trapped her song, the one suspended in radiant light at the center of the plateau. As she reached toward it, the spirit of the wind extended a current of air, intertwining with her essence, and whispered, "Let the truth of your heart free your melody." Far below, in the valleys and villages, a subtle change began. The air seemed to hum with anticipation, as if the earth itself awaited the return of her song. Birds paused mid-flight, and streams rippled in patterns that mirrored musical notes. Even the wind carried a new energy, one tinged with hope and expectation. At that moment, Della appeared, standing at the edge of the plateau, her envy radiating like a dark cloud. She had followed Sonia, eager to claim the power of the voice she had stolen. Yet as she tried to approach, the wind itself created an. Della staggered as the gusts of the mountain wind twisted around her, lifting her hair and rattling the stones beneath her feet. The spirit of the wind, its form now a whirlwind of shimmering air and light, turned its gaze upon her, and the stolen melodies trapped within her being began to unravel. Notes that had once flowed through her as if by magic now faltered, dissipating into the sky, returning to the valleys and streams where they truly belonged. Her chest heaved as she tried to sing, but only broken, hollow sounds emerged, a faint echo of the beauty she had once claimed. The spirit's voice, like a chorus of countless breezes, spoke directly into her mind, "The harmony of another's heart cannot be yours to hold. Envy steals only the illusion of power, it never grants the truth of song." Della fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face, not only for the lost music but for the realization of the pain she had caused. Every village she had deceived, Every child who had waited for Sonia's song and instead heard silence flashed before her eyes. For the first time, she truly understood the weight of her greed, the emptiness that had hollowed her joy. Sonia, standing nearby, her golden voice restored and resonating with warmth, looked upon her stepsister with compassion rather than scorn. Though her heart quivered with memories of betrayal, she extended forgiveness. "Your heart may yet learn," Sonia whispered, her melody gentle yet radiant, "that kindness and humility are the true sources of strength." The wind carried this declaration across the mountain, and Della felt the tension in her spirit ease slightly. She understood that her punishment was not eternal malice but a lesson, the unearthing of remorse and the opportunity for redemption. Slowly she bowed, acknowledging Sonia's courage and mercy, while the stolen song finally dissipated, leaving her humbled and silent. Around them, the mountain seemed to sigh in approval, the wind weaving a tapestry of restored harmony. Birds began to trill in perfect pitch, streams shimmered with the rhythm of returning notes, and even the leaves whispered soft refrains that echoed Sonia's regained melody. Della rose, no longer consumed by envy, and vowed to nurture her own gifts with honesty rather than theft. In that moment, the spirit of the wind dissolved into gentle currents, leaving Sonia's triumphant song to fill the air. Della, touched by the experience, silently followed, learning that envy could not endure against truth and that a heart guided by humility would always find its rightful melody. The valley, once shadowed by silence, now rang with joyous music, a testament to the healing power of forgiveness and the inextinguishable light of Sonia's song. Generations later, the villagers of Eloria would remember the day of the Festival of True Song as a moment when the air itself seemed to shimmer with joy and hope. Sonia, now radiant with the power of her restored voice, stepped into the village square as the first rays of morning sun kissed the rooftops. Children ran ahead, their laughter echoing through the cobblestone streets, while elders bowed in reverence, recalling the trials she had endured and the courage she had shown. Her hair gleamed like spun gold, her eyes reflected the skies above, and her presence radiated warmth that seemed to awaken the very heart of the village. The festival was unlike any other. Long banners of vibrant colors fluttered from the walls, embroidered with symbols of harmony and light. Stalls overflowed with fruits, spices, and baked delicacies, yet none of this drew the villagers' attention as much as the anticipation for Sonia's song. They had waited weeks, months even, since the silence that had once fallen over the kingdom, and the absence of her voice had been felt in every corner of life, in the fading crops, the still rivers, and the somber skies. Now, hope glimmered like dew on the morning grass, for the girl of melodious heart was here, ready to sing again. As Sonia raised her hands, a hush fell over the crowd. The wind seemed to pause mid-breath, holding the leaves in stillness, the birds frozen in mid-song. Then with a single exhale she began to sing. The first note trembled like a candle flame, delicate yet unwavering. Slowly, it grew, rolling over rooftops, weaving through the market stalls and spilling into the fields beyond. Every note carried not only melody but the story of her journey, the envy of Della, the theft of her voice, the silent suffering, and the unwavering trust in the wind that had guided her. Villagers wept openly, recognizing the healing power that had once left their homes. Crops seemed to lean toward the sound, rivers gleamed under the resonance of her notes, and animals emerged from their hiding places to join in a chorus of natural music. Children's laughter mingled with her voice, creating a symphony that filled the valley. Even the wind danced, swirling through the festival, carrying fragments of her song to every neighboring village, ensuring that no ear in the kingdom remained untouched. Della, standing in the crowd, felt the weight of her past actions press upon her chest. She had hoped to claim the glory of Sonia's gift, yet here it was, stronger than ever, pure and untouchable. She lowered her gaze, shame flooding her, and remembered the mountain peak where the spirit of the wind had stripped her of stolen beauty. That lesson had transformed her. Envy had no place in the presence of truth. She bowed her head, accepting her redemption quietly, knowing that admiration and love could never be taken by deceit. Sonia's song continued, now rising in crescendo. Each note seemed to illuminate the hearts of those who heard it. Elders felt the old fears and grudges melt away, replaced by gratitude and awe. Friends long separated by petty disputes embraced, reunited by the power of the melody. Even strangers traveling through the kingdom paused to hear, drawn by the magic that seemed to pulse in the air itself. As the song reached its zenith, a golden light radiated from Sonia, not from her body alone, but from the harmony she had cultivated through her trials. The crowd gasped as the light touched each listener, filling them with warmth and clarity. Parents turned to their children, and children turned to one another, understanding without words that true talent, when nurtured with kindness and patience, could never be suppressed. The wind carried this understanding beyond the village, over mountains, through forests, and across rivers, spreading a message of hope that would endure for generations. The queen herself, who had traveled from the capital to witness the festival, stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Your song has restored more than music," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "It has restored faith, unity, and the joy that our kingdom had almost forgotten. You are a beacon for all who seek light in the darkness." Sanya paused, allowing the applause and cheers to wash over the festival square, then smiled, her eyes glinting with the knowledge that the journey she had endured was as much a part of the song as the melody itself. She lifted her hands again, this time not to sing, but to guide the wind, letting it carry her final notes to the corners of the world. Each note seemed to ripple with forgiveness, courage, and the quiet power of truth. Throughout the day, the festival continued with dancing, feasting, and storytelling. Yet the people always returned to Sanya, for her presence reminded them that envy and malice could never silence what was pure and genuine. Mothers told their children her story, beginning with her humble life in the village, the theft of her voice by her stepsister, and her courageous journey guided by the wind. They explained that while talent could be envied, it could never truly be stolen when it was nurtured with love and truth. By evening, the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the festival. Sanya's final notes lingered in the air, a soft echo that promised the villagers that harmony and justice would endure. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the story beyond the mountains and across the valleys. It was said that anyone who listened closely could hear fragments of her song long after she had left the square, and that these notes would teach courage, kindness, and resilience to all who heard them. Generations later, the Festival of True Song became an annual celebration, commemorating not only Sanya's restored voice but the triumph of integrity over envy. Children learned to sing with honesty in their hearts, elders reminded themselves of the power of forgiveness, and travelers carried the story to distant lands, ensuring that the melody of truth echoed forever. The moral endured in every note. The pure-hearted may face trials and theft, yet their spirit and talent will always rise again, carried by the wind, celebrated by the world, and remembered through the ages. In every corner of the kingdom, from the humblest cottage to the grandest hall, the Festival of True Song reminded all who listened that true beauty, true talent, and true kindness are invincible. Sanya's melody, born of perseverance and love, became not only a song but a legacy, a living testament that envy can never silence what is righteous, and that the heart that nurtures its gifts with compassion will always find its voice, its audience, and its place in the world. Generations after Sanya's remarkable journey, the kingdom of Eloria still spoke of her story in hushed, reverent tones, passing it from parent to child, from teacher to student, and from villager to traveler. They said that whenever the wind blew through the valleys, rustled the leaves of the ancient forests, or swept across the towering mountains, it carried the faint, melodious echoes of Sanya's song, a reminder that a voice born of truth and love could never be silenced. It was a song not merely of sound but of spirit, weaving lessons of courage, resilience, and kindness into the hearts of all who listened. The tale began long before the wind carried her song. Sanya, a girl of gentle heart and extraordinary talent, had lived among the villagers, her melodies touching every corner of the kingdom. People had come from distant lands to hear her sing, to witness the harmony she conjured with nothing but her voice. Children followed her everywhere, their laughter mingling with her music, while elders marveled at the serenity and wisdom that her presence inspired. Her voice was a balm, her spirit a beacon, and yet this brilliance sparked envy in her stepsister, Della. Della, consumed by jealousy, devised a dark scheme. She lured Sanya into a cursed grove during a festival, where she used an ancient charm to steal the girl's voice, leaving her mute. Sanya collapsed, grief-stricken and voiceless, while Della claimed the admiration that had once belonged to her stepsister. The kingdom fell silent with her absence. Crops began to wilt, rivers seemed to murmur in mourning, and the villagers realized, slowly and painfully, how much Sanya's song had been the heartbeat of their world. But Sanya's spirit, pure and unwavering, did not fade. Even without her voice, the wind carried fragments of her melodies, whispering them across the hills, through the valleys, and into the ears of animals, trees, and streams. These whispers reminded the villagers of what had been lost, urging them to hope, to believe, and to act. Guided by these gentle currents, Sanya embarked on a journey to reclaim what was stolen. She traveled through forests and mountains, met spirits who tested her heart and courage, and ultimately faced the spirit of the wind atop a sacred peak. Here her voice was restored, and the first notes she sang resonated across the kingdom, breaking the curse and returning life, color, and harmony to the land. The festival that followed celebrated not only the restoration of Sonia's voice but the triumph of integrity and perseverance over envy and deceit. Villagers cheered, children danced, and elders wept with joy. Della faced her reckoning. Humbled and transformed, she learned the value of humility and remorse, understanding that no theft could ever eclipse genuine talent nurtured with love and patience. Sonia's song became a symbol of hope, a lesson inscribed into the consciousness of every villager. Purity of heart and devotion to truth could never be destroyed, and kindness always outshines malice. As the years passed, the memory of Sonia's deeds grew into legend. Parents told their children that the wind itself carried her melodies, and that those who listened with open hearts could hear lessons of courage, forgiveness, and perseverance. Travelers who journeyed far and wide would hear fragments of the song in the rustle of leaves, the whistle of mountain air, or the gentle rush of a river, and they carried the story back to their own lands, spreading the legend even further. Every child who heard it learned that envy, though powerful, could never extinguish a spirit forged in kindness and truth. The wind became more than a messenger, it was a living archive of Sonia's legacy. Farmers would pause to hear its murmur over golden fields, believing that the song promised a fruitful harvest. Mothers would guide their children to listen when a gentle breeze swept through the village, teaching them that music born of love and honesty was eternal, that courage and virtue could survive any trial. Sonia's journey became a touchstone, a reminder that even if one's gifts are stolen, silenced, or hidden, they can always return through the enduring power of hope, persistence, and moral strength. In time, the Festival of True Song became an annual celebration. Villagers gathered each year to honor Sonia, performing songs, dances, and stories that reflected her journey and the lessons she imparted. Children sang with innocence and joy, elders recounted the trials she endured, and travelers marveled at the enduring resonance of a single voice that had once been silenced yet could never be extinguished. The wind, carrying her melodies, moved with a sense of sacred purpose, weaving her story into the very fabric of the kingdom, ensuring that no generation would forget. Legends say that even centuries later, when the wind whistles through valleys or sweeps across mountain peaks, it carries the same tender, unwavering notes of Sonia's song. Those who pause and listen, children especially, hear more than music. They hear courage in the face of envy, forgiveness in the heart of betrayal, and the undeniable truth that a spirit born of love and integrity is indestructible. Mothers whisper to their children that the voice they hear is Sonia's, reminding them that no act of greed or malice can silence what is righteous. Even if stolen, true gifts will always find their way home, returned by the forces of nature and the enduring faith of the pure-hearted. The kingdom of Eloria continues to honor Sonia's legacy, for her story is eternal. Songs are sung in her memory, lessons are taught in her name, and the wind carries her spirit across every hill, river, and forest. The moral of her tale remains unchanged through generations. Envy may try to silence the deserving, darkness may attempt to conceal the light, but a heart that nurtures its gifts with love, courage, and integrity will always find a way to shine, and the wind will carry that brilliance forever. Sonia's story became more than legend, it became a living testament. Every child who listened, every villager who recalled the wind's whisper, every traveler who heard fragments of her song, knew that talent born of truth and nurtured with love is invincible. Her melodies, carried across the kingdom by the wind, taught lessons that no book or lecture could convey, that kindness, perseverance, and righteousness are forces stronger than envy, and that the voice of the pure-hearted, once stolen, will always rise again to echo through the ages. Thus, in every valley, across every mountain, and along every river, the people of Eloria remember Sonia, the girl whose voice could not be silenced. Her song, Riding the Wind, becomes a bridge between generations, a living moral and an eternal promise, that a voice born of truth and love can never be taken away, and that even if the world falls silent, the melody of the righteous will always return.